Namaskar. We all chant three Omkaras together.
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनो भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Namaskar and a very good afternoon to all of you. Today we are organizing a panel discussion on the current situation in Bangladesh, particularly with a focus on the persecution of minorities. We have just inaugurated an exhibition which has been put together by Shri Francois Gauthier, who is the head of the FACT, which is a foundation against continuing terrorism. This exhibition depicts the story of persecution of the minorities, particularly the Hindus, 1946 onwards. I think you should all have a look at it when we finish with this panel discussion. And I want to thank Francois Gauthier for organizing this exhibition and drawing attention to this very, very important development to focus to the situation in Bangladesh and the situation of minorities there. So thank you very much, Mr. I would also like to thank the Honorable NSA, who has just had a look at the exhibition, and he'll be listening to the panel discussion that is going to start shortly. My thanks are also to Ambassador Satish Chandra, Vice Chairman of the Vivekananda International Foundation, former Deputy NSA, Ambassador Veena Sikri, former High Commissioner to Bangladesh, Dr. Anirban Ganguly, Chairman and Trustee of the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Research Foundation, and of course Mr. Francois Gauthier, who is a renowned journalist. He writes for several French newspapers and also for Indian newspapers, and he's studied Hinduism, India very deeply, and some of you are familiar with his writings. And he is now the editor-in-chief of La Revue de l'Inde, which is a literary magazine devoted to India. Friends, last August, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was ousted from power in circumstances which would be akin to a coup. And one of the most disturbing developments since her ouster has been the return of Islamist radicals in the country and the persecution of Hindus and other minorities. As we speak, the law and order situation continues to deteriorate, and the people there are living in fear, and several of them have crossed into India or are trying to do so. The Indian Prime Minister, in a telephonic conversation with the Chief Advisor in August, had raised the issue of ensuring safety and security of minorities with the Chief Advisor. However, the situation is no better today, and it is continuing to deteriorate. India cannot but be concerned about what is happening. Bangladesh is our neighbor, and we have a role, we have a special role in the emergence of Bangladesh. And today, with what is happening in Bangladesh, I think the memories of 1971 are coming back. And now, as we see, Pakistan has, which committed genocide in that country, and now Pakistan is back in Bangladesh in a big way. The Chinese are there in a big way, and they are talking about new dynamics of Bangladesh-Pakistan relations, people who committed genocide are now talking about a new dynamic and so on. So I think we all have to take note of this, and of course we'll have to look at take stock of the situation, and also look at the options that are available to India. So we have a very esteemed panel, and I think some of these issues will come up in this discussion. So we'll start the panel discussion, and we have already inaugurated the exhibition. And now I will first request Ambassador Satish Chandra.
Thank you very much, Arvind, and a very good afternoon to everyone here. At the outset, I would like to say how very glad I am that the VIF has organized this exhibition and set up this panel discussion to highlight the genocide which is taking place in Bangladesh against the Hindu community there. The presence of Mr. Doval, the National Security Advisor, adds added significance to this event because it underlines the importance that India attaches to it and demonstrates its concerns in this matter. The plight of the Hindu community in Bangladesh is uppermost in our minds. I think the organization of this exhibition and the panel discussion is but appropriate because since 1947 itself, people have tended to gloss over this extremely terrible development. About 5 years ago, in an article in the Sunday Guardian, I think it was February 8, 2020, Vivek Gumaste put what is happening in Bangladesh to the Hindu community in the following terms, and I think that is apt. He stated that they have been the victims of an unprecedented genocide. Their properties continue to be illegally usurped, their temples continue to be desecrated, and their women are fair targets for their detractors, forcing them to flee to India in large numbers. So this was written about 5 years ago. Actually, I would like to underline that the atrocities that are happening against the Hindus in Bangladesh following Sheikh Hasina's ouster is not something that is new. This is an ongoing process. It has been continuing since the time of Pakistan, before Bangladesh became Bangladesh and it was then East Pakistan. It's a continuum. I'm not going to dwell on in detail on what is happening in Bangladesh today to the Hindus, because I think there are others on our panel who will address this appropriately. What I'll try and do is to detail before you the enormity of the travails of this community in Bangladesh over the years, and the fact, and we as Indians, I think, need to admit this, that somewhere along the line, perhaps we in India have failed the community. Coming to the extent of ethnic cleansing in Bangladesh, I will just cite one statistic. There are many others, but I think suffice it to say that while in 1941, the Hindu population, which was close to around 12 million at the time, was 28% of the total population of 42 million prevailing at that point of time. Currently, it's just around 13 million, or a little under 8% of the 165 million that are in Bangladesh. So that is the state of play that has happened there. And as a well-known, uh, uh, very well respected Bangladesh scholar put it, this is Dr. Barkat, he projects that by 2046, that's another 20 years, there won't be any Hindus left in Bangladesh at the rate at which we are going. Now, I am going to try and put before you my own perspective of the how and the manner in which this happened and why did it happen. And I think those are two things that we need to have some clarity about. Unlike the movement of the refugees into India in 1947 from West Pakistan, those from East Pakistan have continued to come. From West Pakistan, the movement stopped around 1950. All the major elements of the minorities that had mainly Hindus and Sikhs who had to moved out by around 1950. This happened because by 1950, the entire West Pakistan had been cleared of the vast majority of the minority elements there. In East Pakistan, this did not happen. And it did not happen because it could not happen, since the proportion of the Hindu population was much larger in the East than in the West. So what has happened from East Pakistan and now Bangladesh is that the migration has been a continuous process. It never stopped. It continued all along. And the important feature in this regard is that the migrations from East Pakistan were in two major waves. The first wave at the time of partition till around 1950-51, and the move out of population was very roughly about 2.5 million. What happened in the West was double in numbers, more than double. It was about between 5 and 6 million people who came by 1950. The second major efflux was during the liberation struggle of Bangladesh in 1971. And here the movement was in fact double that of the movement that had taken place from West Pakistan. And there are differing estimates given. It was around 8 to 10 million. And out of these, about 80% to 90% roughly never returned back to Bangladesh. They remained on in India. So that was the second very major movement. But do not forget that even during this period of 1950 to 1971, movement was continuous, albeit at a much lower pace. And what happened in 1971 during the liberation struggle has been very well put in a book by one of our co-panelists, Dr. Ganguly, in a book that he has written titled, I think, if I'm not mistaken, From Partition to Progress. And this is what I'm next going to say is an element that I culled from his book of actually the massacres and the butchery that took place around 1971. And it is written, the Hindu community was robbed of their lands and shops, systematically slaughtered, and in some cases painted with yellow patches marked H. The mandate of the Pakistan army was to kill Hindus. It was as clear cut as that, and it goes back to really what happened in Nazi Germany vis-a-vis the Jews. A similar sort of thing was happening in East Pakistan. In an authoritative work, S.S. Sharma has written, it's called The Great Tragedy of India's Partition. He pegs the number of Hindus killed in East Pakistan in 71 at between 1 to 1.5 million. And total migration, now right back from 47 to 71, was in the zone of 15 million. So what I've tried to do is to put in perspective the quantum that of movement that took place at that point in time. Unfortunately, this tragedy that the Hindus faced in Bangladesh did not come to a definitive end even after liberation. And there are many, many factors that one can list. Some of them are the fact that the Sheikh Mujib Rahman regime, which promised a secular approach, was short lived. And thereafter, Bangladesh was ruled by the military under martial law and subsequently the BNP government, who had no commitment to secular principles, who shared the Pakistani mindset of seeing Hindus as the enemy, and who encouraged the growth of Islamic fundamentalism. Another factor, of course, and you may say, well, you had Sheikh Hasina, what happened then? I think when history is written, people would recognize that she, in fact, failed to root out Islamic fundamentalism from Bangladesh and failed to create a genuinely secular state in which Hindus could live in safety and security. And in fact, she cohabited with fundamental elements like, for example, the Hifazatul Islam. And finally, of course, we are seeing now in the post Hasina dispensation, it is controlled by fundamentalist and, of course, anti-Indian elements. In fact, you have people who are Bangladeshis who have written that Bangladesh for the last several decades has been going through a phase of Islamization. A part of this, of course, happened in the pre-Sheikh Hasina regime under Khalida Zia, when you had a very strong ISI presence actually in Bangladesh, and fundamentalism was fed into the country. But it has, even in Sheikh Hasina's watch, I'm afraid, fundamentalism has grown. And it would be perhaps true to say that even if not active subscribers to Jamaat-e-Islami politics, a majority in the country have grown up with Islamic values. It is all these factors which have resulted in the continuous movement of Hindus from Bangladesh to India. And in fact, there have been spikes of greater movement whenever there have been events that have taken place, whether in India or in Bangladesh, and of course, whenever there has been rioting. The other element that I want to address is why did this happen? Why this movement, etc., from Bangladesh of Hindus? And I would like to say that this was intrinsic to the very nature of the two-nation theory, coupled, of course, with the manner in which leaders from both India and Pakistan went about things in dealing with this. And in this context, I'll make the following points. First, the two-nation theory gathered traction only by stoking communal tensions. And if you look at it, for starters, the great Calcutta killings in August 46 under the aegis of Surabardi were a part of this exercise, as were the great Noakhali massacres, which took place shortly afterwards, and the chain reaction that led to throughout undivided India made communal harmony very, very difficult, if not impossible. The poison and hatred spread on account of the two nation theory and on account of the efforts of promoting it, permanently scarred communal relations in Pakistan and led to the migration thereof of the Hindu and Sikh communities. It is, of course, true that the rest of India was also impacted, and it is true that there were communal tensions in India. But this was much less, as we did not subscribe to the two nation theory, and therefore today the Muslim community in India is thriving, is prosperous, is multiplying. Second, I think since there was the two nation theory, and since it was in the logic of the two nation theory that the populations would be divided, it was a mistake on the part, certainly of India, not to have undertaken an exchange of populations on the basis of religion as a preemptive move to prevent the violence that occurred through partition. And it may be mentioned that this idea was not novel. It had been propagated by many Sikh leaders, the Maharaja of Patiala, some Congress leaders from Punjab as well as Sindh. And I do believe that had this been done, much of the massacres that occurred thereafter through partition may well have been avoided. Of course, movement of population would have been painful. There's no denying that. But it would not have been bloody. It would have been orderly. It would have been peaceful. And it would not have led to the bitterness that ensued thereafter. Third, in fact, the exchange of populations with neither the leadership of Pakistan nor India agreed to at the point of partition in regard to West Pakistan and East Punjab in September, December, or rather October, December 47. Such an exchange was organized under the aegis of the Indian Armed Forces. And you had a movement of 5 million people that took place. I think it was about nearly 3 million from East Punjab and the rest from West Pakistan, 2 million. This was under military control. And at that point of time, the violence naturally was lower because it was a controlled thing. So what I was saying earlier, that had we planned on this, had our leadership had the wisdom to plan an exchange of population, at least people who wish to move out should have been moved out. But while in regard to the West, whether it is Pakistan or East Punjab, where this exchange was accepted finally, wisdom came late, but it did come at some point in time. In respect of East Pakistan, this wisdom never dawned on our leadership in terms of Nehru. He did not agree to it, and he did not countenance the idea of movement of minorities between East Pakistan and the neighboring Indian states. Instead, he had inter-dominion agreements. There were two of them. One was in mid-1948, and the second one was the Nehru-Liaquat Pact in April 1950, which was theoretically an excellent agreement. I mean, you had ministers from India who would be on committees in East Pakistan, etc., to oversee things and vice versa. It was the agreement, no one can fault the agreement. But there was no sincerity on the other side to implement it appropriately. And hence, you had massive problems continuing all along in East Pakistan. In fact, uh, Mr. Mukherjee resigned from the cabinet, Shama Prasad Mukherjee, over the Nehru-Liaquat agreement. And I would just quickly read out a few quotable quotes from what he said at that time about that agreement and suggest that much of this is applicable even in other aspects of relationships that we have had with East Pakistan, with Pakistan. And he says the recent agreement in the Nehru-Liaquat Ali, to my mind, offers no solution to the basic problem. The evil is far deeper, and no patchwork can lead to peace. The establishment of a homogeneous Islamic state is Pakistan's creed, and a planned extermination of Hindus and Sikhs and expropriation of their properties constitute its settled policy. As a result of this policy, life for the minorities in Pakistan has become, he goes into Hobbes, nasty, brutish, and short. The agreement, unfortunately, tries to ignore the implications of an Islamic state. In spite of all assurances and undertakings, we saw the gradual extermination of Hindus from the NWFP and Baluchistan, and latterly from Sindh as well. In East Bengal, about 13 million Hindus were still living, and their future had been a matter of the gravest concern to all of us in India. And then he goes on to detail what happened, and I will not go into that. That is a very lengthy quote. And then the last bit of that element is since January 1949, at least 10 lakh of people have come out of East Bengal to West Bengal. Several lakhs have gone to Tripura and Assam. And we know the rest is history. He resigned. The fourth element which I want to mention to you, which had we perhaps pursued, it needed a lot of courage to do so, and it was advocated by three great Indian leaders. One was Sardar Patel, and the other was the President of India at that time, Rajendra Prasad. And the third was Dr. B.C. Roy. And they said that, look, if in East Pakistan Hindus cannot live amicably, then there should be a transfer of land from East Pakistan to India to accommodate those unfortunate people who have to come away. And Dr. P.C. Roy, for instance, and I'll give you his very brief quote, Hindus will not stay in East Bengal as the general mass of Muslims do not want them, and so create situations inducing them to leave. Unfortunately, I said this idea found little traction with the then Prime Minister. You know, given all what I have said, coupled with the fact that Bangladesh is inimical to the Hindus resident there, and that the latter may become extinct in that country in a few decades. We have, of course, the government of India has made known its unhappiness to the authorities there about the plight of the Hindu community. But in my view, much more needs to be done. For those who know me a little bit and have heard me speaking about my favorite country, which is Pakistan, I've spoken a lot about the nature of the Pakistani DNA, and I will not go into that. People know what my views on that are. What I've never spoken about is the Indian DNA. And I'll say a few words about that because I think it is relevant to what is happening in Bangladesh. And I think our DNA essentially is a tendency of being overly reticent in pushing what is our own case. In an area far removed from Bangladesh, but very relevant to India, is of course Jammu and Kashmir. And in that context, it is surprising that on the 15th of January 1948, when Mr. Iyengar, our minister who was representing us in the UN Security Council, merely called for the withdrawal of the invaders from Kashmir and the stoppage of fighting there. He did not call for condemning Pakistani aggression and for imposing sanctions on it. This is reticence, nothing less. And in a similar way, Gary Bass, in the famous blood telegram, and now I'm coming back to Bangladesh, said that India through 1971, while in diplomatic circles to push its case abroad, it did speak of genocide, which had taken place in Bangladesh. In India, they did nothing. In fact, they are on record as having admitted, and I'm speaking specifically of Foreign Minister Swaran Singh and DP Dar, saying that we hid it or we tried to hide it and brush it under the carpet in India. I think this reticence needs to be shed, particularly in the light of what is happening today in Bangladesh and in that context. And therefore, I greatly welcome this initiative by the VIF to draw public attention by virtue of the exhibition by Francois Gauthier in collaboration with VIF and by this panel discussion to draw attention to this. And very briefly, 3 or 4 or 5 things we need to do. And I'll finish with that. I think in terms of shedding our reticence, I think we need to be focused much more on drawing both national and international attention on the developments that are taking place in Bangladesh today. It is the need of the hour. I had hoped that the last session of Parliament would at least have had a joint resolution condemning it, condemning the Bangladesh authorities, and calling upon them to take steps for the safety and security of the minorities. Similarly, at the international level, I continue to hope that this matter will be raised appropriately at all relevant fora, and there are many where this could and should be done. And finally, in keeping with the spirit of the CAA, we should also consider, and this is my belief, and it is in line, I think, with the thinking of people like Sardar Patel and others, and Shama Prasad Mukherjee ji as well, granting citizenship to all Hindus in Bangladesh who wish to come to India. This should, of course, be accompanied by the deportation of illegal Bangladeshi Muslim migrants in India. I think this is a variation on the land for refugee idea that was floated earlier. It is a variant on that, but I think it needs to be done. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, sir, for that very useful background and also the analysis of the current situation and some suggestions that you have given. NSA has to leave another 20 minutes or so, so I think we'll have to hurry up with this. So now I request Ambassador Veena Sikri to kindly make her remarks, but quickly in about 8 to 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Honorable Shri Arvind Gupta ji, Director of BIF. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for organizing this excellent exhibition. I congratulate Francois Gauthier for putting it together. Shri Ajit Doval ji, thank you for joining us here today in this exhibition and for the discussion. I think that when we look at the treatment of minorities in Bangladesh, we must absolutely focus on the shocking series of events that have happened in Bangladesh ever since the 5th of August last year. It is true that this tragic cruelty imposed on Bangladesh and on the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh has not been done for the first time. We've seen this, that right since 1971, this has been a regular feature. In 1971, it was done in absolutely gargantuan ethnic cleansing, genocidal shape. But even after that, in 2001, in 2021, there have been attacks, but they were controlled by the state, by Sheikh Hasina herself when she was there. This time, it has been completely uncontrolled, and it's been the most vicious attack on the minorities for one particular reason that we have to remember, that what has happened in Bangladesh in August 24 is really a recurrence of the losing side in 1971 trying to come back to power in 2024. I think if we understand the events in Bangladesh from this point of view, then we are able to make a lot of the post August 2024 situation fall into place. In 1971, you had Pakistan, you had the Jamaat-e-Islami, and you had the Razakars. And in 2024, you certainly had the Jamaat-e-Islami, and you had, backed by Pakistan, supported by the deep state of the Biden administration in the north, with China in the north. And you had the Razakars and the army also supporting the situation. So because of this, they immediately, just like in 1971, when Yahya Khan green-lighted Operation Searchlight, the first two targets were arrest Sheikh Mujib and send him to West Pakistan and go after the minorities and intellectuals. In 2024, it was the same target. Get Sheikh Hasina out of the country, and after that, go after the minorities in Bangladesh. I think the extent to which they have done this is something that is not only very serious, but it has grave implications for India. I think that we have to look at this attack on minorities in two lights that two points that I'd like to focus on in the context of these attacks on minorities. First is the complete denial by the interim regime of these attacks. Till today, they are completely denying these attacks. And in fact, they are calling it a creation of the Indian media. And Indian media has always been very objective on Bangladesh. They have always covered all sides. But the point is that they are being blamed, the Indian media is being blamed for creating this myth of the attack on the minorities in Bangladesh. And this is something that is very surprising because it's a myth that has spread worldwide. The global media is covering it as such, even today. And it is something that we have to work very hard on. I think the exhibition that is being held today is a very important start of this direction. But I think really speaking, we have not done enough to bring out the reality of what is happening to the minorities in Bangladesh. And this is a grave lacuna. It cannot be dismissed as internal affairs of Bangladesh, as Tawhid Hussain tried to do when he met EM in Muscat recently. And it cannot be dismissed at all because this is a genocidal ethnic cleansing that is going on. The target has been not only, as I said, the same pattern of 1971, raping, looting, killing, expropriation of properties, forcing the minorities to give up their jobs, forced resignations, in short, getting them to leave the country. They want to have another Pakistan in Bangladesh so that you can again declare an Islamic state. And we see today the other myth that we have to recognize immediately, that this is not a spontaneous student uprising. Much that it is always written around in the rest of the world, the myth that is spread that this is a spontaneous student uprising is completely untrue, neither spontaneous nor led by students. And I think the first one to break the truth on this was Muhammad Yunus himself when he spoke in September 2024 at the Clinton Global Initiative in New York. And he introduced actually his own special assistant, who is said to be a member of the Hizb ut-Tahrir. He brought him on the stage and said, he is the mastermind. And Yunus said, don't think this happened by itself. This was meticulously designed. So I think to say after that, to call it a spontaneous student uprising is a myth. And we should do away with that myth and we should write the truth about this and say that it is not a spontaneous student uprising. This is something that we have to call out very clearly. Otherwise, in the rest of the world, they believe that it's the Indian media calling the minorities attack, and they believe that it's a spontaneous student uprising. And secondly, there were no students. this was the Jamaat-e-Islami and their wing, the Islami Chhatra Sibir, described as a student wing, but it's got people who are in their 40s and 50s who are really the second rung leadership for the Jamaat-e-Islami. This was led by the Jamaat-e-Islami. Muhammad Yunus is only a puppet. He's unable and unwilling to control the situation. You have in that government members of all the Islamist organizations. You have the Hizb ut-Tahrir. Mahfouz Alam is now an advisor in the government. You have the Hifazat-e-Islam in the government. You have the Jamaat-e-Islami behind the scenes. You have the Islami Andolan Bangladesh in the government, in the regime. So this is by no means an interim government at all. It's a regime. The interim, the caretaker government system that was earlier in the Bangladesh constitution, and this government took their oath on a constitution which does not allow for an interim regime. So ipso facto, this is an unconstitutional, illegitimate government. But if you even see what the caretaker government allowed when it was there, it said it was mandated as a non-party neutral government that could exist for 90 days only to have elections. Now this regime is neither non-party nor neutral because it has political parties and it has other people in it. So I think that the first focus should be that this regime really has no reason to exist and a real caretaker regime needs to be brought in for the early conduct of elections. So I think this is another very important aspect that we have to look at in the context of what is happening today in Bangladesh. Another issue that I think that I'd like to focus on in a big way is that how the minorities themselves are reacting. And I think this is a very important aspect of what is happening in Bangladesh, because for the first time since 1971 and before, even between 47 and 71, you had a lot of people leaving East Bengal, East Pakistan. For the first time since perhaps 47 or 1971, the minorities have said that we will not leave Bangladesh. This is our country and we are citizens of this country. We want our rights. I think this is another aspect that has not received enough attention globally, because the fact that the minorities themselves have said that they want to stay on in Bangladesh, this is significant and they have to be supported in that, because according to the Bangladesh constitution, there is freedom of religion and all religions are to be given equal rights of worship and equal facilities everywhere with no discrimination on the basis of religion. Now, when the minorities for the first time said this was actually a great shock, I think, for the interim regime. And not only, of course, you have people like the Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Jot, which has been very active, which has documented the attacks on Bangladesh minorities, which has documented that there were at least 2,000 attacks in the first 15 days, and the Bangladesh media supported it. So how can they then blame the Indian media for that? But because the Bangladesh media has been gagged subsequently and even boardrooms have been taken over, they have been allowed to carry out the myth of the Indian media. So the new grouping that is formed in Bangladesh is the Sanatan Jagran Manch, led by Chinmoy Das. Because he was so successful in organizing very large rallies in Dhaka, in Rangpur, in Chattogram, and other places, which were held despite the fact that they were banned by the administration, the regime, in its nervousness, arrested him and put him in jail. But the fact is that even though he's in jail, he's been denied bail and he's been treated completely with disregard for his rights. The fact is that he has put forward an 8-point demand. And I find that there are many people in India who don't even know that there's an 8-point demand put forward by the minority community collectively, asking the administration, because the administration, the regime, has not allowed this even to appear in the local papers. So there is no information about the 8-point demand. It's a very simple set of demands, and it asks for things like a ministry for the minorities, a law for the protection of minorities, that there should be court cases against those who have perpetrated the atrocities on the minorities, and they should be brought to justice. That they should be they should be the funds that are there given to the minority should be done into a foundation separately for the Hindu, Buddhists, and Christians. So I think that this fact about there not being even interest in following up on what is happening with the minorities is something that we need to look in and to be very concerned about, because I think that that the fact that the minorities can be treated like this just across the border in India. We've had demonstrations in Kolkata, we've had demonstrations in Delhi and other places. We have wanted to take it up, but it all seems to fall by the wayside. And even the army today in Bangladesh is in a much weakened position, not only because of the leadership issues that are there within the army, but also because of a certain imposition by the Biden administration saying that if they did anything which would affect any individual human rights in Bangladesh, they would not be allowed, even as individuals or as an army, to go for peacekeeping operations. So this seems to have muzzled the situation from the Biden days. So I think that if we are able to look at taking up these interests of the minorities in a very, very specific way, outlining what has happened, bringing out the facts, denying the deniability of this that they're doing, and bringing to the forefront of the attention the 8-point demand and how it needs to be accepted and realized in every way, we will be able to show that we are serious about the minorities and that we are not just looking at it. I do not know why there is a group in India that feels very embarrassed when talking about the minorities in another country like Bangladesh. I remember the same situation when I used to be in Malaysia as High Commissioner, and there too you have a very significant group of non-Muslim minorities. But again, there was a huge problem with their treatment and a huge embarrassed silence on this end about it. So I'll stop here because I understand that there's a great shortage of time. I thank all of you for being here to listen, and I do hope there will be further action on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I think we could have elaborated further, but this shortage of time. So I now request Dr. Anirban Ganguly to kindly make his remarks. 8 to 10 minutes.
It's the same Samvad pattern. I went all the way to Bangkok and spoke for 8 minutes. I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Arvind Gupta. The dilemma for me is to speak in front of those from whom I have learned how to study Bangladesh. And especially NSSR is here. 12 years ago, 14 years ago, it was under his tutelage. It was in this very building that I learned to look at Bangladesh. I don't know whether I have done justice to his expectation. But there was one thing that he told us, he told me at that time. If you can study one country well, then you can study any country and understand any country across the world. I'm extremely humbled and honored to be here. But of course, this is a gathering which is very painful. We are gathering here to discuss an issue which is extremely painful. And I'm glad that you have at least included one Bengali in this panel. And I could have addressed all of you in Bangladesh's Matribhasha also. But there are some who will not understand, and I'll raise the heckles of those who are opposed to the language movement. And therefore, I shall speak in English. And I also want to express my pranam to the Bhikkhu Sangha, members of the Bhikkhu Sangha who are here. And looking at them, seeing their presence here, peculiar situation in Bangladesh, that in November, while the Prime Minister of India declared Pali as a classical language, at the same time, in Bangladesh, members of the Bhikkhu Sangha could not observe or celebrate Kathin Chivaradana. So this is the contrast. Those who advise us on how we should handle ourselves and Bangladesh, I think this is one point which shows where we stand today as the Republic of India and the situation in Bangladesh. Former Deputy NSSR, I would also like to add one more name to the name of leaders that you took. It was also Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar who advocated complete exchange of population. It was Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar and Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee who had called for a complete exchange of population on the Eastern Front as well. And later on, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, Sardar Patel, advocated ceding of territory by Pakistan if it could not take care of its minorities. And in order to gag Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee, the first amendment was brought in so that he could not speak about breaking of Pakistan. I think these are points that we need to recall when we go, because you speak about the unending persécution of minorities. Et mon ami François, nous sommes vraiment très heureux. Without getting tired, you have continuously highlighted this issue, and then you've given us an opportunity to speak on this as well. Ambassador Sikri referred to this is the first time that more than 70% Hindus decided that they would stay put in Bangladesh and not leave. And that is why the slogan, Amar Desh, Tumar Desh, Bangladesh, Bangladesh. I think that slogan defines the difference of this movement of resistance in Bangladesh and of the situation this time. I'll very quickly run through because I just have 10 minutes, and I'll very quickly run through, but obviously one can go on certain issues. The situation in Bangladesh today, very briefly, they were not satisfied in just burning and gutting Mujib's house. Bulldozers were brought in to destroy 32 Dhanmondi, Sheikh Mujib Bangabandhu's house. These very people also desecrated the war memorial. These very people had opposed the language movement, and these very elements had also supported Pakistan-led genocide in 1971, and they want a minority-free Bangladesh today. So bulldozing Mujib's house is a message, is a larger message that the ideals of the liberation wars must be completely buried and burned in the soil of Bangladesh. Now, when Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee was calling for the division of Bengal, and he said that he spoke about the creation of Bengal, many people told him, oh, you know, in Bengal, the Hindus are a sizable minority. They will take care of themselves. But he had answered at that time, he said, it is said that 45% of Bengal's population, comprising nearly 25 million of people, constitute at that time undivided Bengal. Such a large number that no government can possibly crush them. This is nothing but an idle, self-deceiving slogan. The Hyderabad state today includes 90% Hindus, but they are groaning under a tyrannical rule which is predominantly communal. It is not the number that matters. What matters is the system of administration under which the people are compelled to live. This was the answer, and I think it is very relevant to what we are discussing today. Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, in his resignation letter on 10th October 1951, just a year after Jogendranath Mandal came away, could not live in Bangladesh, in East Bengal, mentions there are two grounds which have disturbed our relations with Pakistan. One is Kashmir, and the other is the condition of our people in East Bengal. I felt that we should be more deeply concerned with East Bengal, where condition of our people seems intolerable. Dr. Shama Prasad Mukherjee resigned on the Nehru-Liaquat Pact. And in 1951, when Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar resigned, he also gave that as one of the issues. So I just wanted to draw a historic parallel because I think to understand the larger context, it is extremely important. Now I'll very briefly go through, it's very interesting that the 29 million US dollars, the 29 million US dollars given by the Consortium for Elections and Political Process Strengthening was given to Associate Professor Ainul Islam of the Department of Political Science of Dhaka University. He was the director of Micro Governance Research Initiative, 29 million US dollars. And this Micro Governance Research Initiative held 444 programs all across the country with students till September 2022. 10,264 university students across Bangladesh were part of this entire program. And then in January 7th, Applied Democracy Lab was established at the Dhaka University funded by this organization. And therefore, when President Trump the other day said that 29 million US dollars were given to an organization whose name no one has heard to strengthen Bangladesh's political infrastructure, I think he was on very solid ground. I mean, you fund 29 million US dollars to an entity in Dhaka University. I'm sure it's not pure academics. I mean, it's not pure research. So obviously there was something more to it. Now, Vinaji, you spoke about the international, the entire thing. I mean, you are all such seasoned diplomats. Vinaji continues to be one of the most popular former high commissioners in Bangladesh, especially for the Hindus. She's still remembered, she's revered, and she's also saluted. You see, the office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, they were invited by the, I call it the interim arrangement. Interim arrangement. They were called by the interim arrangement. And if you go through the report, 144 pages, that report speaks about the students' movement, the way they were, the students' movement, the so-called students' movement. Because if it was a students' movement, you wouldn't call your opponent Dalal of India. It was more than that. But the interesting bit is when it comes to the persecution of minorities in Bangladesh, the OHCHR report uses this sentence. Information available to OHCHR has not shown that such incidents were orchestrated or organized by these parties' national leadership, which also took steps to condemn violence targeting minority groups. They have let the cat out of the bag. This is the line that the head of the interim arrangement has been parroting. That, these are all political attacks. They're not religious in nature. And while there is a clear pattern, there is a clear method to the attacks that took place, the United Nations report says that, these were not orchestrated, whomever they were talking to. And then they say many perpetrators of acts of revenge violence. Very interestingly, the report uses the term revenge violence. In the sense you're implying that they were political in nature. So the violence against minorities were revenge violence in nature. They were political and not religious. And they say that apparently many of those who perpetrated those violence apparently are enjoying impunity. So that much for the report. Should I have a few more minutes or should I now stop? Yeah. Now, please let us remember also that the vandalism that took place, it took place on Christian churches. The Bangladesh Christian Association in Mymensingh, Thakurnagar, Dinajpur, Nagaon issued a statement. Buddhist villages were attacked. Crematorium ground of the Buddhists were occupied. Katinchivardana could not be held. And in Rangamati, Khagrachari and Bandarban, all these areas, the Buddhist communities were under attack. Land grabbing took place. And most importantly, over 1,000 cases of extortion. This is within 100 days, within less than 100 days. Over 1,000 cases of extortion. Head of institution of universities who were Hindus. Because please remember that there has been a continuous radicalization of campuses in Bangladesh. Head of institution, Hindus who were vice chancellor of universities such as BUET, Qazi Nazrul University, Pro VC of the Chittagong University, VC of the Khulna University of Engineering and Technology, were compelled, forced to resign. In the same manner as Hindus in police forces were dismissed or were deliberately, they were engineered attacks against them. 1,500 teachers, school colleges, from various school colleges were forced to resign. There was a reduction in number of Durga Pujas because the head of the interim arrangement gave a statement, oh look, we are all celebrating Durga Puja. 1,000 Durga Pujas were less this year than previous years. And you had Islamic songs being sung in Durga Puja pandals. They can be sung, no problem, but why? Why in a Durga Puja pandal? And you had property and places of worship, 59% property and places of worship were desecrated. Idols were vandalized in 19 pavilions across 14 districts, and Hindus were prohibited to play music during Azan. This was the new development that happened. Obscene gestures against Hindu goddesses were publicly made, and those who resisted it were obviously given a short shrift. Judge, I just want to complete now because the number of figures are there. I just want to conclude with 2 points. One is that, of course, the land boundary agreement, Veena-ji, and we wrote about it, historic land boundary agreement. And please remember that Prime Minister Narendra Modi, during his visit to Dhaka for the land boundary agreement, I think he's the only Prime Minister who said that publicly standing in Dhaka that I envisage the same future for Bangladesh as I envisage for India. Large number of things that India did for Bangladesh, that is separate. But what was, I mean, you can say that it was perhaps amusing, and you can say that it was amusing, but it was also maybe there was deep concern. Professor Shahiduzzaman of the Dhaka University called for a nuclear treaty with Pakistan, and publicly in an armed forces officers training group he called for it, and he says Pakistan is the most reliable, trustworthy ally of Bangladesh. Pakistan doesn't want us to become a vassal state of India. They will do anything to protect us from Indians. This was followed by loud applause. And he clarified, he says, it doesn't mean that we want to manufacture a nuclear bomb. It means that we want to come under the umbrella, nuclear umbrella of Pakistan. So I think it's very clear, the mindset is very clear of those who are heading the dispensation in Bangladesh today. And please also let us remember, 26 Sufi shrines, and I have the entire list with me here, list with photographs. And this is of 2 months before. 26 Sufi shrines also were vandalized and desecrated. So I think it is very evident what the intention of this dispensation is. And the only thing that we need to continuously do, I had Professor Abul Barkat's also entire his passage. In fact, when Sir was heading VIF, Professor Abul Barkat had come here. He had given a talk here, and we had met him at that time. And it is nearly 12, 14 years ago that he had sounded the alarm, Professor Abul Barkat. And people like Shariar Kabir, who are behind bars today, they have been muzzled, they have been silenced. And I think exhibitions such as FACT must go around the country. What we can do is to continuously highlight these issues, keep it afloat, because in this country and across, there is a very vocal group which wants us to be silent on this. And in fact, I was surprised. I'll not take the name, obviously. I was surprised just after the coup, the so-called coup. A very well-known columnist in India, who has a regular column in a English daily, weekly column, said that, we have to have a dialogue with the anti-liberation forces. But who are these anti-liberation forces? In 1971, you had to write H and put Ambassador Chandra quoted. I have cited in my book both 1971 and even in 2001 under Khalida Zia's regime. You had Frank Pallone raising this in the US Congress, saying that Hindu houses are marked with H and they are being persecuted. So these are issues. So therefore, even when we make a statement, we have to be very careful, because please understand who are the anti-liberation forces, and then try and understand whether you can at all talk to them or not, whether they want to talk to you or not, because their agendas are very clear. So thank you so much for this opportunity. VIF holding this program only means that this goes across the world and people take note, those who have to take note, and with a very distinguished presence, this is a very meaningful exercise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ganguly. So you had only 8 to 10 minutes, but you said quite a lot and very forcefully, very useful. Thank you. So now I request Francois Gauthier to make his.
Good evening, everybody. My name is François Gauthier. I have the privilege to live in your country for a long time. People come to me and they say, oh, you're doing great things, you're saying great things. Whatever I learned it here in India, not in France. I'm born in France, I'm Catholic born. I mean, of course, it's great to be a Frenchman too, little militant, I'm a militant journalist. Whatever good I learned it in this country. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be here today. I'm grateful for one great man who was here also. I came here, I drove from Paris to Pondicherry when I was 19 years old by car, 5 cars. We had a caravan of 5 cars. We drove from Paris to Delhi and from Delhi to Pondicherry. I was very ignorant about India. Like most Westerners, I was very, very, very ignorant about your country. Same cliches, poverty, violence, etc., etc. Then, as a young journalist, I covered Kashmir, the Valley of Kashmir, when there was the ethnic cleansing of the Hindus, in the late 90s. And this opened my eyes. What I saw in Kashmir opened my eyes. And from Kashmir, everything came. So when I saw the killing of the Hindus of Kashmir and I saw the 350,000 Hindus fleeing the Valley of Kashmir, I decided to do an exhibition on the Kashmiri Pandits, the Kashmiri Hindus of Kashmir. So this exhibition we opened here in Habitat Center, maybe in 2000, my wife is there, she will know, 2000, I forgot the date, but it was open in the Habitat Center. And then I started studying Indian history. And I saw that Indian history was not written as it happened. Then we did another exhibition on Aurangzeb, who's, talking about persecution of minorities. Aurangzeb is the topmost, is the guy who made it in a very rigorous, very cruel, but very methodical manner. I mean, everybody learned from Aurangzeb because Aurangzeb did it in such a cruel but meticulous manner that it is never forgotten. So then from Aurangzeb, of course, I went to Bangladesh because I used to cover Bangladesh. And I saw already in those years how much the minorities were persecuted in Bangladesh. So this exhibition came out of my reporting in Bangladesh, but it also came out of Kashmir. Kashmir, as I said, for me was an eye-opener. I'm a defender of Hindus because very quickly when I started freelancing as a journalist, I discovered that Hindus are the most tolerant people in the world. They accept you, they accept that God may be he or she, they accept that God may be Allah or the Christ or Krishna or anybody. So this greatness, this acceptance of Hindus by the other opened my eyes also. After Kashmir, it was my second eye-opener that these people, the Hindus, they are the holders of the last knowledge in the world. Who am I? What happens when I die? Who is God? How God manifests himself or herself at different times with different scriptures. So I became a defender of Hindus then. And of course, the Hindus of Bangladesh, this exhibition is mainly about the Hindus of Bangladesh. And my focus is mainly about the Hindus. But of course, there are other minorities who are persecuted in Bangladesh. And whenever there is suffering, we have compassion, and we have empathy for the suffering of others. But I'm mainly a defender of Hindus. Many people know me and respect me for that. So I wish that this exhibition, my friend said here, goes around India and goes around the world. Sri Ravi Shankar will come on the 1st of March, and he said that he will take it in the United States because he's going to the United States. But people need to stand up, for the suffering of Hindus in Bangladesh, for the suffering of other minorities in Bangladesh. So we need all of you who are here today. You need to spread the message. One, come and see that exhibition, and two, spread the message of that exhibition that ultimately, the suffering should touch us. We need to be touched by suffering of others. This is one of the message of this country, that compassion, we need to be touched by the suffering of others. And lastly, I would like to say that India is a powerful country. Sometimes Indians don't know it. Sometimes I say, oh, it is great to be an Indian. And the Indians look at me and say, what? But it's great. I mean, when I came to this country, I thought, I wish I'd been born in India. I wish I'd been born an Indian, because it's so great to be an Indian. Now, India is a powerful country. India needs to stand up for the freedom of Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. I think, as the Bhagavad Gita says, I mean, violence is sometimes necessary, strength is sometimes necessary. When your borders are threatened, when your brothers and sisters are persecuted or killed, violence becomes dharmic. Am I wrong? I mean, maybe I have misinterpreted the Bhagavad Gita, but I think it does say that, that being strong is also dharmic. That at the moment, what is happening in Bangladesh is terrible. It is terrible. And the world is silent. And the world is silent. And India is silent also. So I think that the government of India, I'm a journalist, I'm a lover of India, I'm a defender of India, but I do think that India is a very powerful country, and that if India flexes its muscle a little more, definitely Bangladesh will be more careful into, leaning towards Pakistan, letting Pakistan, would committed such a terrible genocide in 71. A million and a half Hindus were killed by the Pakistan army, in East Pakistan in 71. People have forgotten that, and it was a terrible one of the most horrible genocides of the 20th century, with that of the Armenians, or that of the Hindus in Bangladesh. So unless, India starts flexing its muscles, says, enough, 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 then the suffering will continue in Bangladesh.
So thank you, Mr. Gautier. I think we can have about a couple of, is it some time or how is it? 10 minutes? So one or two comments we can take from the audience and then we can close it. Aap chalenge? Okay. I think no, I think he has to leave perhaps. So he's already a little delayed. Oh. अब चले गए वो. Yeah. So we can have a couple of comments from, yeah, please. Kindly be very brief because we are really.
My name is Rahul Barua. First of all, thank you very much for the rich insights by this panel. So I'll ask the most popular question in the country right now, especially in the context of Mr. Trump saying that India has the right to take action in Bangladesh. So what is the scope and possibility for India to take some kind of military action in Bangladesh?
Okay, we'll take one or two more. Yeah. Yes, please.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Ambassador Chandra, the way you suggested about deportation of Hindu, I think we are trying to serve their purpose. If that election start, there are many countries where Hindus will be asked to leave this country, and we can't afford to this type of compromise. And the way Mr. Ganguly has pointed out, 40% Hindu are there. And what was the percentage of them in military or any administrative service? If they were in good number in military service, this situation would have not happened. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Lovely discussion, sir. I owe my origins from my maternal grandfather's side to Sylhet, which is a district of Bangladesh. I have a video here, which is by the Indian Express, on when this crisis first started. Hindu refugees from Bangladesh were not allowed to cross the border into India by the BSF. And this is on video, on camera, on record. Why was this? And if this is the case, then obviously the Indian government is also partly to blame for the genocide of minorities in Bangladesh.
A lot of people have come in also. Okay. So I think one last, and then I'll request the panelists to make their concluding remarks here.
Well,
Anybody?
The Indian government of genocide, that's a very strong
Yeah.
statement. I think there should be some proportion in your statement.
Okay.
You don't know what genocide is. I am also from Dhaka.
So let's go back to the panelists now, and anyone maybe could react to any of this question or anything
about
you would like to add.
about military action. I'm not equipped to answer that question, but I think you have answered that question. The video that you are pointing out is a very early video, and obviously it doesn't happen because could you identify whether they are refugees, whether they are Hindus or not? Please, it takes a little time. There is a certain structure, there's a certain state structure, and please go back to the Indian Home Minister's statement and the entire border paraphernalia that has been put within 10 days of what happened in Bangladesh. Entire border paraphernalia, the BSF setting up special monitoring zones there. And there are certain things, obviously, many people have come in also. So I think it's extremely a very strong statement. If you are an Indian, don't use this statement because then you don't know what genocide is. Genocide is what happened in 71. Genocide is what happened in 1950 February. Genocide is what happened in 2001 to 2006. That is genocide. And that the East Pakistan, East Bengal, the Pakistani government, and later Begum Khalida Zia's BNP, they are now seeing some amount of reason in their heads did it. So I think we should be, and again, please let us remember this, 70 to 75% Hindus, and I have some friends here whom we will not name, but who will bear me out, don't want to come away. They want to be there. So please let them be there. And let us do what we can to give them moral support all across the world. If they are saying, why should we leave? And they are not Hindus who have been living in Bangladesh after the formation of Bangladesh. They are Hindus who have been living there for generations. To ask them to leave is itself an affront to them. They don't want to leave. Previous genocides, previous pogroms happened, Hindus left. Now they don't want to leave. So,
The other point you wish to add?
no, this is one point I wanted to.
I'll just. You want to go? No, I just wanted to make 3 or 4 general comments. Number one, I think one of you mentioned military action. Look, in dealing with neighbors, there are problems. Military action is always a possibility, but it is a last resort. And in the instant case, I think we should be very clear that diplomacy has been already at work, ab initio, from the very beginning. Our concerns about the situation in Bangladesh were made known to the Bangladesh government not once, but repeatedly. It is a continuing exercise that is on. And there is no question of military action at this stage. At some point in time, anything can happen. That's another story. But right now is a time for diplomacy, yes. And I said this, and I stand by that. That a very proactive position should be taken by us on this issue, because I think everyone in India, and there is no division on that, feels very strongly on this issue amongst all right-thinking people, at least, that what's happening there is condemnable, is terrible. And I had made certain suggestions, which I will not go into again, about the sort of things that could be done, but this is for the government. They have much more information than I or you or anyone here has. We are not privy to the information that is available. But I think the government will be doing all that is necessary and all that it can do at this point in time. So that is essentially on your question of military points. On the Hindu issue about, Anirban is absolutely right. Look, when you're a border guarding force, as is the BSF, all sorts of elements are crossing over. Who are they actually? And the point basically is that when, in fact, I had mentioned the idea of exchange of populations and so on, that was something which I did say. It is not that you are compelling them to leave their country. which it is today. It is those who wish to do so. And a line in that direction has been taken by the government of India in terms of the CAA, for example. Yes, minorities in some of our neighboring countries, we have indicated very clearly that we would be quite happy and prepared to accept them should the need arise. But if they do not wish to come to India, God bless. So I think our positions on this are very clear. And that's all I think I've answered the points.
The latest news said that it's going into a civil war situation because not only against the Hindus, the Muslims are fighting against Muslims. Those who are against the side of Khalida, not Khalida, our own previous prime minister now. Their groups are Muslims. They are not Bengalis and Hindus. They are being butchered. That's the latest news just now we heard. There's a civil war going on over there right now.
She thinks a civil war is going
What is
on.
your question? What is your question?
No.
No, she's just commenting.
It's a comment.
It's a comment.
Those are being butchered, but point is that now the Muslim against Muslim, those who are
Sheikh Hasina.
Hasina, they are being, you know.
Well, I don't know if that's a question, but definitely one of the weaknesses of Islam is that Muslims kill themselves, each other. I think the Muslims kill more Muslims than they kill Hindus, actually. We see in Pakistan the Sunnis who attack the Shia mosque or the Ahmadi mosque. There's a tremendous amount of people get killed. So yes, in Bangladesh also, the salvation might come from them killing each other. I don't know what Adinaba says to it.
In that position, that we will go against no human being should be killed.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I think we just need to have it in perspective. Boli ami ekটু boli. I think we need to have it in perspective. See, there's been an increasing in the last few months. There has been an increasing turmoil within Bangladesh with amongst various political parties. Political parties were registered political parties because the BNP obviously realizes that it's not being given space by the Jamaat. Tariq Rahman has not been able to come back to Dhaka. Tariq Rahman, people like leaders like Tariq Rahman, Nurul Haq, Noor, Vice President of the Gano Adhikar Parishad, if I'm right, and people like Farhad Mazar, leading intellectuals and activists in Bangladesh have started turning the students' revolution, so-called, as a failure. There's a severe dollar shortage in Bangladesh. There is a power crisis, declining economy, and the students' movement itself is faced with various internal clashes and faults. And there have been corruption allegations against them as well. Now, the electoral reform process that has started, because most of the parties have now started demanding that elections be held, which is something that Yunus was delaying till the other day. He had no definite roadmap about it. Now, when they're demanding elections, the election commission, the reform commission is inviting political parties. Out of 47 registered parties, only 22 have been invited. So naturally, there is a growing sense of restlessness, and a large section, people who have been to Dhaka just a week back, come back and report that there's a large section of the middle class who are feeling that this is a revolution, that we did not want such a revolution. We were better off without this revolution. So let us see how it evolves. People like Farhad Mazar, in fact, in a press conference, I believe 2 days ago, in a press conference in Dhaka, has clearly said, it's not that we want certificates from them, but they said that most unfortunate that Hindus are being labeled as agents of Delhi just for demanding their fundamental rights. Is it fair? So good, there are a number of now voices and forces active within Bangladesh society.
May I just,
Yes.
just to add a little bit to what Anirban has said, and I'm very glad he mentioned this. Uh, as a diplomat who's been to many, many countries, Bangladesh, where I served from about 1981 to 84, those were the Ershad days, is perhaps amongst the most polarized societies that I have seen. At that time, you had the military and BNP supporters, and on the other hand, there were people who were the freedom fighters owing allegiance to Awami League. The differences were sharp, and I don't know the extent of population, but very substantial chunks on each side. So what you said on civil war does not surprise me in any manner, particularly as the targeting that was done, it was Hindus, of course, because this was a part of a fundamentalist lines. But also to a large extent, it was all supporters of the Awami League. Hence, this thing, it was more or less on the cards that this sort of thing will happen. How it will play out, one doesn't know, but one thing is certain, that in all this turmoil, the people of Bangladesh, whether on one side or another, all are going to suffer. And I think out of this, and if you are an optimist, you would hope that realization would dawn on people in Bangladesh that all that happened in the last 10, 12 years in terms of the Indian outreach to Bangladesh, which happened during Sheikh Hasina's time, really was something which was for the good of that country. And I think in the medium and longer term, perhaps that realization will come. And that is why I come back to where I started off in response to a queried military option. That's not an option for today, because I think within Bangladesh, in time, and we have to give it time, the thought process would be there that what we have done in terms of targeting the Hindu community and wanting the nuclear umbrella from Pakistan, etc., was something that is wrong. Hopefully that realization will come. Thank you.
My idea is that India is a great nation. We should stand for humanity, whether they are Muslims or Hindus.
Okay, I think that's another debate, another discussion. Okay, one small comment. We are going to just end it. Okay, last comment.
Namaskar. Sorry, it's a little off the track, but it is very integral to what we do. When we think of civilizational studies, we have very important landmarks in Bangladesh. I've still documented, places and inscriptions. Is there no way in the diplomatic circle, when you're negotiating, whatever you're negotiating is not my concern, that certain ancient landmarks of any civilization should be preserved, because that is for posterity to understand human development in terms of civilizational growth. So how do we protect that part of the landmass? You may transfer the population from one place to the other. You can't transfer a certain inscription embedded in certain mandir or in certain building, which is talking about 5,000 years old. So this is my concern in such situations.
You're quite right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there is no two ways on this. That, of course,
No, but I think we have
cultural heritage, that is what you're talking about, should be preserved. And the ICCR from India, at least, is very active on this. But here again, ultimately, it is what the people who are in that country, or the government in that country decides. I mean, in Afghanistan, you had the defacing of the Buddhas. What could you do? I think no one justifies that. No one can justify that. But it happened. But
No. Neeraji,
Okay.
Neeraji, I just want to come in here. We have Professor Dilip Chakravarti here. I think no one more than him has really worked on these aspects of Bangladesh, India and Bangladesh. Perhaps we can have a separate talk of his here. There are two aspects to this. I remember when I was in BIF, I had actually, under Shri Dovalji's tutelage guidance, I had put together an entire presentation on Shakti Peeths in Bangladesh. And many interesting things which came up. And I made a presentation at that time, nearly 15 years ago, more than 15, about 15 years ago. But point is, you should have first a dispensation in Bangladesh who believes in humanity and who believes in a shared cultural civilizational heritage. That is the challenge first today. Otherwise, there'll be nothing left. They're even destroying Sufi shrines. They're desecrating, vandalizing them, finishing. They're destroying Buddhist monasteries. There's stupas. I belong to Atisha Dipankar's village, Dhaka, Bikrampur. So is that Atisha's legacy? You cannot expect the Jamaat, the Hifazat, the Hizbut to protect Atisha's legacy. You have to first have a dispensation which believes in a shared cultural heritage, which believes in the cultural rights of Hindus and Buddhists in Bangladesh, and then go ahead jointly to preserve these. We have to work towards that. Today, if you talk to them, there's nobody to listen. Nobody to listen.
Okay. International law. You know,
beyond international law hai na ye log.
Trump is changing all the international law. There's no international law left anywhere now. Okay, very 30 seconds. No, please. Okay, I think let me just give her a chance. She's from Bangladesh. Maybe she might throw some light.
She's from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. This is Mithila Paul. I'm also belong from a small city, northern part of Bangladesh. Actually, it's called Sylhet.
Okay.
Sir, obviously the situation is very terrible over there, and I actually don't want to know the laws and everything. But after resigning Sheikh Hasina over there, after 5.
Not resign.
Okay. So.
Okay, please. Please.
And the situation became very, genocide is going on over there. And I'm living here, and the government of India, ICCR scholarship I'm holding, and every situation, every single moment, I'm feeling like that my family members are very scared about the Muslim majority peoples over there, and the thing happens over there, recently my parents went to the hospital, and the receptionist told to my mother they should go first, and the majority of Muslim people was talking like, this is not the time of Awami League, this is the time of Jamayat. So every occasions and all, they are not able to organize the way they were doing before. So I really expect, and I really want to the Indian government, as they are researching in this matter. So please take a good action against these genocide and all, sir. This is not a question, but I really expect the government to take against the steps.
I think there's another student there who wants to say something.
I'm also from Bangladesh. I'm Ratan Roy. I want to come the question Auntie Ji asked. Yeah, I am from Borishal. Auntie Ji asked a question that why India should particularly talk about Bangladeshi Hindu. Why we are not talking about the total activities. Yeah. First thing is all the Bangladeshi medias and internationally all the medias trying to. I will say that they are trying to hide the real things. What is happening in Bangladesh? No one is highlighting what is happening actually. And if we go through the UN report, I want to mention just one thing that they have mentioned in their news portal that based on deaths reported by various credible sources, the report estimates that as many as 1,400 people may have been killed between 15 to 5 August. 1400 people may have been killed between 15 to 5 August. But at the executive summary, they have mentioned that at the invitation of the interim government of Bangladesh, OICS conducted an independent fact-finding inquiry occurred between 1 July to 15 August. Okay, means they conducted that independent fact-finding inquiry between 1 July to 15 August. But they mentioned in their news portal that the total number between 15 July to 5 August is 1400. That means mathematically they are denying what happened between 5th August to 15th August. I mean, I want to highlight one thing is that even also denying what is happening, what has been happened between 5 August to 15th August, and also all the Bangladeshi medias, they are trying to hide what is happening. So that's why India should raise their voice, because we think that only India is concerned about the Hindus in Bangladesh. Okay, that is why India should raise voice about minorities in Bangladesh, especially for Hindus.
Okay, thank you. So we'll conclude this session here, thanking Mr. Gautier for, just one second, Gautier for his organizing this exhibition.
This exhibition is about all the minorities.
Yes, all the minorities, yeah, of course. And giving us an opportunity to discuss. I think this is the first large discussion we have held in VIF on Bangladesh. We have had some small discussions within, but now things are coming up, more information is coming out. And I think the two students who spoke, they kind of told you, I mean, there is no further argument really left. So the point of this discussion is first to understand what's going on there, but second also to reflect on what are the options India has. So some people, we talked about diplomatic options, somebody mentioned military options, etc. And I think here the government is the best judge. They know, they have much more information than we do. But this point which Dr. Ganguly made, that we should continue to talk about it, raise this issue. I think this is not now the time to be silent. As he said that India is silent. That is what he said. So I think this exhibition, this discussion, and maybe some articles, etc., would make people think, because Bangladesh is of our own blood, really. And the memories of not only 71, but 46, and those memories also have been mentioned today. So it cannot be business as usual. Something new, something fresh, something more urgent. I think what was highlighted was the urgency. Options can be many, but how do we now have a roadmap which leads to some effective action? We can talk about many solutions, but what is the effective action which stops this genocide, but also puts some pressure? And also this present dispensation, which has been, actually instigating much of this and is under the influence of some very harmful elements. How can they be stopped from doing it? And what are the options? And I'm sure today, as lady here said, there is a civil war, many people are happy. So there would be elements in Bangladesh itself who are wanting that change. I don't think they are happy with the so-called revolution that took place. But they probably are not hearing from India or from Indian voices. So this discussion, I think, has added to that, and we have had a free and frank and quite a good discussion, and a lot of good suggestions have also been. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Let's give a hand to our panelists, especially Mr. Gautier. Thank you. Namaskar. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
शांति मंत्र। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।